The film begins with Detective Roy Patterson fiercely questioning a suspect inside a vehicle. Roy requests information about the whereabouts of a woman who is thought to have been taken in broad daylight by this perpetrator. After some coercion, the man coldly admits that she has already died. Will and Lisa Spann, a married couple, were driving to her parents' house 8 hours before this tragedy occurred. The mood is strained since the pair intends to end their relationship as a result of Lisa's recent affair and general discontent. Will, who doesn't want to take this break, delays their arrival by stopping at the gas station to fill up his car. He stops and tells Lisa to go on vacation or drive back to their city instead of leaving her off at her parents' house, but she insists on taking this time to think on their relationship and her own feelings for him. While Will is at the pump, Lisa decides to go inside the convenience shop. In the restroom, her phone vibrates with a message from Clint, the man she had been seeing, but she ignores it. She is about to leave after buying a bottle of water when someone screams her name, catching her attention for a brief period. Unbeknownst to Will, who is still focused on the task at hand, a truck covers our view of the scene, and when it moves, Lisa and the strange individual are gone. After filling up his car, Will calmly waits for Lisa to return. As the minutes pass, his concern builds. He examines the convenience shop and the restroom but finds no sign of her. Approaching the cashier, he inquires if he has seen his wife. Strangely, despite the fact that the cashier clearly served her previously, he claimed not to have spotted a woman who matched Lisa's description. Will steps outside, his anxiousness rising, and calls Lisa's phone number, only to be met with her voicemail. He frantically shouts her name and searches the entire petrol station, but she is nowhere to be seen. He eventually decides to call the police to report his missing wife, and Detective Roy Patterson takes the call. Roy assures Will that he would send an officer or perhaps come himself, urging him to stay at the petrol station, but Will, overcome with worry and fear, decides to go to Lisa's parents' house instead. When he arrives, he is greeted by a puzzled Anna and Barry Adams, who had expected their daughter to accompany him. After educating them on the issue, Will tells them to stay put in case Lisa returns and to call her friends nearby to see if she is with any of them. After Will leaves, Barry instantly calls the police. Will's irregular behavior makes them suspicious, and they are afraid to trust him. Will returns to the petrol station and recalls the recent past, when Lisa originally proposed they take a break. This irritated Will, and they began arguing. Will claimed it's because Lisa felt unfulfilled in their marriage. Lisa just admitted that she no longer felt anything for Will, but she had no idea why. Back in the present, Will exits his car to meet Detective Roy, who has finally arrived at the gas station. He tells that Lisa has been missing for almost an hour and a half, and her parents have no idea where she is. The men enter the supermarket and ask the cashier, Oscar, to show them the security footage. Oscar claims that their cameras haven't worked in 2 weeks, so Roy decides to issue an Amber Warning to seek for Lisa. While glancing around, Will notices that a security camera outside is still filming. He enters the supermarket again and insists that Oscar hand him the tapes. After being beaten up, Oscar finally tells Will where the recording is exhibited, and Will takes the entire machine before driving to the police station. He provides Roy the security videos and requests that the IT staff evaluate the footage. They finally noticed Lisa was met by an unknown man, but she appeared to know him as she continued to converse with him. The man then motioned for her to follow him to his car and opened the door for her. Lisa appears to have been getting into his car before the large truck obscured their view. Lisa and the car had already left by the time the truck drove away. Will took a picture of the guy's car before Roy sent him to a separate room for questioning. Roy began by asking basic questions, but soon moved on to Will and Lisa's marital troubles. Will was irritated and agitated, claiming that Roy should be outside looking for Lisa rather than asking these pointless questions. However, Roy stated that he could not rule out the idea that Will was involved in his wife's disappearance. He even asked Will if his success as a property developer would attract any opponents who could want to kidnap his wife. Will returns to Lisa's parents' home after verifying he is free to depart. He shows them a photograph of the unfamiliar man and his car. To his amazement, the pair recognizes the man as Knuckles, a handyman they occasionally hire and a childhood friend of Lisa's. Anna recalls seeing the car in what she refers to as Morrison's. With this new clue, Will rushes directly to Morrison's, all the while deceiving Roy over a phone call, pretending he's merely driving aimlessly around town. When his GPS tells him he's there, Will gets out of his car, grabs a crowbar, and walks through the woods to a wooden gate. He sees the car he's looking for through the crevices and trespasses onto the property, where he discovers Knuckles feverishly packing his belongings. Will quietly enters the trailer and threatens Knuckles with his crowbar to tell him where Lisa is. When Knuckles refuses to answer, Will hits him until Knuckles says that he abandoned Lisa for a man named Frank and that he will take Will to Frank's location if he stops beating him. Will then steals a gun from Knuckles' trailer and uses duct tape to tie Knuckles' hands together and gag him. Will aggressively places Knuckles in the trunk of his car and travels in the direction that Knuckles has designated as Frank's location. However, while on the way, a police officer stops him for speeding. Will orders Knuckles to remain quiet while attempting to appear natural in front of the cop. However, things take a turn for the worst when the officer orders Will to exit the vehicle to search the trunk. Will escapes into the neighboring woods out of despair. Meanwhile, Roy returns to the gas station to see Oscar, only to discover that the shift has changed and the cashier is no longer the same man. He then visits Lisa's parents' house to inquire about Clint, whom Anna claims Lisa hasn't been seeing lately. Roy informs them that the last 3 emails sent to Lisa were from Clint, who has been asking to see her again, but she has never responded. However, when the police examine Clint, they find nothing untoward. When Barry requests that the detective take more action to find his daughter, Roy responds that there is no evidence of a crime based on what they have discovered thus far. Back in the woods, Will manages to elude the cops and chooses to walk to Frank's location. He follows the sound of gunshots and ends up on a small, paved road. He discovers an ATV, but as he tries to start it, a big man warns him and asks who he is. Will pretends that he wants to conduct business with Frank and knows him from Knuckles. The muscular man appears doubtful, but after some excellent acting by Will, he allows Will to continue heading towards Frank's house. Frank's location turns out to be a whole compound full of drug addicts and traffickers who are cooking up the substances. Will sneaks throughout the facility until he discovers Frank, who is ordering around his minions. Will continues to creep about while holding his gun, eventually ending up in a garage. He is apprehended by a man inside a car, but he manages to beat the man until he passes out. To his amazement, he spots Oscar and realizes he's part of Frank's group. He grabs the knocked-out man's shotgun and heads in Oscar's direction. His quest brings him to a barn, which appears to be the center of drug manufacture. Even when he unintentionally encounters a worker, Will quickly subdues him. Will eventually winds up in the main area, which is filled with barrels of explosives. Will bursts into the room, pointing his handgun at Frank and one of his goons, Larry. He demands to know Lisa's location, but Frank claims ignorance. Will is impatient and tells them to open the crate, suspecting Lisa is inside. However, when Larry swings the doors open, Frank abruptly opens fire on William. Will retaliates by shooting Larry dead, resulting in a brutal shootout with Frank. Dodging gunfire, the barn evolves into a dangerous hide-and-seek maze. When Frank fires again, Will's return shot hits its target, killing him. To Will's dismay, this leaves him without any clue on Lisa's whereabouts. Will exits the barn, unaware that the gunfire has started a fire near a pool of chemicals. After dispersing the assembled junkies, he notices Oscar emerging from the barn. They draw their weapons on each other, but Oscar swears he had no involvement in Lisa's kidnapping. As both sides lower their firearms, an uneasy peace emerges. Oscar admits he knows Lisa's location but demands $20,000 in exchange. Will is hesitant, but when Oscar provides Lisa's phone as proof, he reluctantly accepts the arrangement. As the two argue about the payment, the barn explodes in a massive explosion caused by the earlier little fire. Roy returns to the police station and answers a call. An update on the event with the police who stopped Will's car. They immediately begin laying up a perimeter. Soon after, Roy arrives at the crime site, where Knuckles is held in the backseat of a cop cruiser. In the present, Roy is probing Knuckles about Lisa's kidnapping. Knuckles had a flashback of how he cornered Lisa at the gas station, drew a knife on her, and grabbed her up. However, when confronted with Roy, he plays it tough, flatly rejecting everything. Roy isn't having any of it, though. He gets in Knuckles' face, warning him to speak up or spend the rest of his sad life in prison. Knuckles ultimately snaps, declaring Lisa's death. Knuckles had alerted Frank of Lisa's plans to return home, saying they could abduct her for a large ransom given Will's money. Earlier that day, when Knuckles unexpectedly met Lisa at the petrol station, he acted on his plan and drove her to Frank's estate. Frank, on the other hand, was upset that Knuckles had brought Lisa to the location of their drug operation, so he instructed him to dig a hole for her body. Fearing for his life, Knuckles ignored the command and fled the scene. After hearing Knuckles' story, Roy and the cops arrive at Frank's complex to extinguish the fire and arrest Frank's guys. Will, who is disheveled from the blast and sitting by the police car, stands up to greet Roy. When he asks Roy if he'll be arrested for kidnapping Knuckles, Roy simply instructs him to stay put. Roy walks around the back of one of the buildings and discovers a human-sized hole that is covered with metal. He half expects to find Lisa's remains after lifting the metal, but the pit is empty. As Will roams the neighborhood, he hears distant muttering. Following the sound, he finds Lisa in a little cabin. After being let free, she is determined to leave this nightmare. "Take me home," she whispers. Without hesitation, Will cradles her in his arms and transports her away from the horror. Back at Lisa's parents' house, Will is standing on the driveway when Roy comes after handling the matter. Roy explains that they know Will killed some individuals at the complex, but he opted to let it go and not apprehend him. The film concludes with Lisa grasping her husband's hand and inviting him to come inside the house with her, implying that they are not taking that break after all. Thanks for watching. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe for more of these recaps. Until next time, have a nice day.